Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Determinants of Her Health podcast, where we examine the systems that affect women's health and how we can shape them. I am so excited for this topic today. When I started this podcast, this was the first on my list. And today we are talking about premenstrual dysphoric disorder, or PMDD. And today I have with me Phoebe Williams. Phoebe, will you go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know sort of your relevance to this topic?
Of course, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. So my name's Phoebe Williams. I am 29, based in London, and I am the founder of the PMDD project. So we're the UK's first charity dedicated to supporting people impacted by premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And my reason for starting it is because I also struggle with the condition myself.
When was it that you were diagnosed with PMDD, and like what sort of led to that diagnosis?
So I think when I was diagnosed was probably about 2021,
Okay.
from memory. But before that, I struggled with it for a really, really long time, probably for like 8 years prior to that.
Yeah.
And for a long, long time, didn't even know PMDD existed, had never heard of the term before. And so kind of felt a lot that, I was coping with or reacting to my periods very differently, very dramatically, as in comparison to my friends who I lived with, and they all experienced periods and they kind of just got on with life. Whereas for me, it flipped over my life completely, every single month, and I just went into self-destructive mode. So for the majority of the years of having PMDD, yeah, I didn't know what it was. I'd never heard of it. Couldn't put a name to the symptoms that I was experiencing, and I would go to the doctors quite a lot. I'd actually go to the doctors in secret. I wouldn't tell any of my friends because I was kind of
Mm.
ashamed of what I was experiencing and how intensely I was experiencing it, and didn't really have the language to communicate that. So would go to the doctors and would be often faced with, it's just PMS, it's just premenstrual symptoms. I nearly got misdiagnosed with bipolar. And there was one occasion when I got told I was just being a little bit dramatic. So, many times I was kind of gaslit in a medical setting. And it was only until I really started to experience serious suicidal thoughts.
Mm.
And that's not, I don't normally experience anything like that. It was just in the phase before my period that I would start to experience these. And from then, I really started to relentlessly Google my symptoms and just really try and get to the bottom of what it was that I was feeling, because I just know that I couldn't continue living like that. And then I came across a blog article about PMDD, and it was like, tick, 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 everything this person is saying is exactly how I've been feeling. So I went to the doctors and yeah, told them what PMDD was. They said they'd never heard of it before, but they'll go away, do some research, and they did. Came back the next day and rang me and said, "Yeah, you've got PMDD." And so that was my diagnosis.
That's amazing. And was it through like a primary doctor that you saw, or did you ever see like a psychiatrist or psychologist?
It was through a primary doctor. Yeah, I've always just gone to GPs, and I always try and ask, only recently now that I sort of know you can, but always try and ask for women's health professionals or
Oh,
specialists,
yeah.
or gynecologists. But for me, I've always just gone down the GP route. And yes, it did take me a long time to get there, but for the diagnosis. But I've been quite fortunate in that I haven't had to go down the many different paths that people have to go down to get that diagnosis.
Yeah. Yeah, I think your story is so similar to so many women who really struggle to get diagnosed and also just know that there's something wrong and don't know what it is. And there's two things to that. Like, I don't know if you experience this, but I've heard this from other people that as soon as our period starts, we get almost like amnesia. Like it all goes away and we completely forget like what the past 2 weeks were like. And it was actually my husband who brought it up. He was like, "Yeah, did you forget what happened like 3 days ago where you were like on the floor inconsolable and like couldn't go to the grocery store?" Like, and I was like, "But I'm fine now, you know?" And so it was just, I think that a lot of people can relate to that like wave of amnesia that hits as soon as
Yeah.
your period starts.
I really do get that. I know for some people it's different where like it takes them a few days after menstruating to feel like them again. But for me, it
Mm,
genuinely is the moment I begin bleeding. I
yep.
feel like this wave of I'm back. And then I just forget the person that I became for 2 weeks. Like you've just mentioned, that's exactly how I feel. It's like two conflicting personalities. And
Yeah.
I suppose that's why I understand why I nearly got misdiagnosed with bipolar, because it's the
Yeah.
contrasting personalities. But no doctor ever thought to sort of connect it to my cycle.
Yeah.
And so that until we did that, that was only when I could sort of get the help that I needed and to make that little connection.
Yeah. I actually thought I was bipolar because of just the extreme differences of how I felt. Um, and and also I think there's a bit of an identity crisis that comes along with it too, because you're like, who am I? Am I this person who can't
Yeah.
handle life, or am I this person who's pretty happy and enjoys spending time with my friends? Like, who's the real me if I'm these two completely different people depending on when I'm at in my cycle?
Absolutely. I feel like it definitely defines me. And like
Mm,
knowing for a long time until I knew what PMDD was, I was in that conflicting feeling of like, which one is me? I don't know which
yeah.
one I am. But now that I know that it's my hormones and it always occurs right before my period, and I know that PMDD exists, I try not to let it define me as much. And I know which personality I am. But kind of
Hmm.
on that as well, I feel like it's really difficult because back to the amnesia point, I think when you do try and seek help and you go to the doctors and you sit down and you tell them how you're feeling and you're in the follicular phase, so the phase when you're feeling great, like
Hmm.
you've got amnesia. You don't remember anything that you've just experienced for 2 weeks. So actually you can't portray or like articulate how bad it was because you've forgotten.
Yeah.
So it's really challenging to try and like represent that person that you become in the doctor's room because you're no longer that person. So it's really challenging for so many people.
Yeah. And I think there's an element to this where people are also afraid to sort of be. I don't know if this is a problem so much in the UK, but in the US, there is a fear that comes along with being like portrayed as the crazy woman, like, the hypochondriac, or even the risk of, are they going to, tell me I have to go to an outpatient or an inpatient facility? Like, am I going to be like, what's going to happen if I'm honest about the very real symptoms I'm experiencing? And I think especially with just thinking about like the privilege that comes along with that, like I don't have to worry about a CPS call, or I don't have to worry about being possibly like referred to some type of program that I know isn't actually good for me. But yeah, that's something that I think is a barrier for a lot of people, to just be honest about their mental health symptoms that they're experiencing.
Yeah, I think when you think about it historically, women would be deemed as hysterical and they
Yeah.
would be sent to a unit where they would stay there for however long because they didn't investigate into hormones. Like
Yeah.
hormones have such a power on everything that we do and how we work, but historically that's never really been factored into us the way we feel. So it's no wonder that we're kind of silenced a little bit and a little bit afraid to speak up when we are struggling because we don't know what the response is going to be.
Yeah. So I want to back up really quick, and just for any listeners who, aren't familiar with maybe the menstrual cycle and what we mean with like the different phases, could you just briefly like describe what the phases of the cycle are, and then also like what the symptoms of PMDD look like during those phases?
Yeah. So we will start with the menstruation phase, which is the phase when a person bleeds. So that's usually a few days where a person will bleed, and that's the beginning of the cycle. And then it goes into the follicular phase, which is the phase when I talk about PMDD, the phase that we feel like our best self, we feel
Yeah.
like normal.
Yeah.
And we can function normally, our hormone levels are stable, and we're just able to function at our regular pace. We then go into the ovulation phase, which is when the egg begins to release, and that is our body's getting ready for this change. And so hormones tend to fluctuate at this point. For some people with PMDD, they can notice that their symptoms are creeping in at this point, but for others, it's a time of feeling slightly energetic, slightly sexy, your best self kind of thing. And it's just the phase before the luteal phase, which is roughly 1 to 2 weeks before menstruation. It really is different for everybody. But this phase is when PMDD hits for those that struggle with it. Your hormones are kind of fluctuating massively at this point. It's getting ready for the bleeding phase. So the estrogen and progesterone are all over the place. And really what PMDD is a sensitivity to those fluctuations. And so in this phase, for those living with PMDD, they really are feeling incredible anxiety, debilitating depression. They're feeling brain fog. They have physical symptoms as well, breast tenderness, their insomnia and just inability to sleep, but feeling really, really tired as well, extreme fatigue. There's lots of different symptoms. I suppose for someone with PMS, someone that just doesn't have PMDD and just, generally struggles a little bit with their periods, this phase is, again, generally speaking, just the phase when you're not feeling great, you're feeling sluggish, you're feeling tired, you've got sore breasts, you're bloated, etc. So yeah, that's my least favorite phase.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a perfect description. I know for me, even yesterday, I have like my period tracker app, and I was like, okay, I'm starting to feel more irritable than I normally am, and like popped open the app and it said, okay, you've got 14 days left before your period. And I was like, yep, I'm still like finishing up the ovulation phase, but I'm definitely starting to notice like, okay, this is not my normal level of irritability. And I guess that would probably be similar to someone's like PMS, where I know that the big wave of the PMDD symptoms are coming in. And I personally take an antidepressant, and my doctor's given me the option of just taking the antidepressant during that
Mm.
phase. And that seems to work pretty well, but I've tried a lot of different things, and I think people really have to try things to figure out what works best for them, because like you said, everyone is different.
Definitely. And I think that's exactly it with PMDD, and I suppose many different women's health conditions. It really is trial and error. And that's kind of frustrating. Well, it is frustrating because you really do have to find what works for you and what doesn't work for you. But it really is trial and error. And there are actually so many options out there. And that's something that I'm constantly trying to advocate for and raise awareness of. That I too take antidepressants, and I wouldn't say I think I'm still trying to figure things out with it. It's definitely alleviated the more intense symptoms, but I think I'm still trying to figure out what's right for me. But for others, it might be more of a holistic approach. They might want to go down the lifestyle changes route. They might want to go down the supplements route. For those that really have tried and exhausted all options, it can be having a hysterectomy.
Yeah.
It really, really, really is different for everybody. So it's just finding what works for you, really, which yeah, can be infuriating.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to add is that it's not necessarily a hormonal imbalance. Like you said, it's the response to hormones,
Yeah,
which I think is people don't don't immediately understand. They hear, oh, you've got a hormonal issue. It must be that your hormones are imbalanced, so you produce too much. And no, it's actually just the way my brain reacts to the normal levels of hormones that my body is
exactly.
producing. Yeah.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think this is probably one of the reasons why there's been such a lack of awareness. We haven't had the research or anything like that. But yeah, it's even healthcare professionals weren't aware of this, but it's not an imbalance. I have spoken to healthcare professionals who have said or described PMDD as a hormonal imbalance, and it's just not. We've got the
Yeah.
same level of hormones as other people, but it's just that sensitivity to the inevitable fluctuations that we're going to be facing every month.
Yeah, that's actually a great like lead into the next part of this podcast of zooming out and kind of looking at the systems that affect this. So, what can you say about the research that has been done, or where the research is lacking with PMDD?
So I think I'm definitely starting to notice more and more research taking place in the past, like couple of years, really, which is great to see and it gives me hope. But historically, I think women's health has been massively underfunded and under-researched. I saw a stat recently, something like 90 odd percent of research or medical research has been done on men's bodies.
Yeah.
We make up half the population, so that statistic just should not be. It's just crazy to think. And the reason that people, we've not been funded into, the reason why we've not been experimented on, I suppose, is apparently because our bodies are too complex. Now, that the lack of research has led to inaccurate data, has led to poor treatment, has led to misdiagnoses, and just so many lives have been cost as a result of that.
Yeah.
Our bodies might be a little bit more complex than men's. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be treated on. And I just think the lack of research is so damaging because we're starting to unpack so much more now. Like in recent times, we've unpacked that or researchers are starting to identify that there's a pattern between neurodiversity and PMDD. Now, just recognizing that can be such a game changer for so many people because it means that they're able to find what works for them, fast track the help that they need, really just tune into the potential clashes that they face in neurodiversity and PMDD and really find what works for them to alleviate those symptoms that are inevitably going to be really intense during the luteal phase. We wouldn't know that without research.
Mm-hmm.
We're identifying that it shows up on brain scans, and that comes with so many different questions. That's really, really new
Yeah.
research that's identified that. And I just think that lack of research, that lack of insight and data has just meant that we aren't able to openly talk about PMDD. Healthcare professionals aren't able to learn about it because you need data in order to be more informed, and we haven't had that up until now. So I really do think there is more research being funded into it. I do think there are more opportunities for women's health conditions to have a spotlight on them in the labs. And that's exciting because I just think, if we have this conversation in 10 years' time, it will be a very different answer that I give you. And we'll have so many more answers and potentially so many more accurate treatments. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, it really is. And it makes me really hopeful in case I have a 4 year old daughter and in case she ends up having it. I think that not only will people be more aware of the condition, but also that there will be more research into it. And hopefully there will be better treatment options or earlier detection or, all these things that'll be so much easier on her than it was for our generation. And even more so for like our parents and grandparents' generation. Like, I don't know what women did back in the day. Like I don't know what they did.
No, and I think it kind of goes back to, looking at generations like that. I think where we are now, this is the best we have been at communicating about our needs and where we are struggling and just women's health in general. We are the best at communicating where we are right now.
Mhm.
And when we think back to generations previous, they didn't have that language to use when they were struggling. They didn't feel able to speak out. It was kind of, I think it's kind of we've been built to believe that, well, if you experience periods, it's a very normal part of being a woman. If you're fortunate enough to experience periods, then you kind of just have to put up with it. And
Mhm.
it's just part of being a woman. And actually, that's so damaging because there are so many people out there really struggling. They shouldn't be struggling to the intensity that they are. People are taking their lives.
Yeah.
That's not normal. That's not a normal part of being a woman or experiencing periods. It's just not. And so I think by building that language and building the confidence and breaking down those taboos that we've always had and those stigmas that have always been in the way of us expressing how we feel and what we need, I do think we're future generations to come. So your daughter's generation will hopefully have those tools in place where it's just common knowledge to talk about women's health. It's not awkward, it's not taboo, it's just normal.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really hopeful for that too. What do you think about the role of social media and how that has like helped with PMDD and raising awareness?
I think it's had a huge difference. I wouldn't have discovered PMDD without social media.
Oh wow.
And I think it's the power of community. I believe that the PMDD community are just incredible because, we've got a group of people who for so long have been left unheard or
Mhm.
dismissed or ignored, or just unable to speak out because they don't have much confidence in what they're feeling. They don't know what it is. They can't put a name to it. And then suddenly they find this community of people who are talking about it online, feeling safe to do so within that community. And it just builds strength for the community. It just builds strength for someone to go, that's how I'm feeling. Okay, so what steps do I need to take to be where you are in your process? And I think it's just giving people that confidence and that voice to just to talk openly about it, and also just know that they're not alone. I certainly felt so isolated, so lonely with my condition for years because all of my friends around me didn't have it. And they just experienced periods as a normal person would. Um, Whereas I was just completely floored by it every single month. And so that really had a massive impact on my mental health as well as my PMDD because it just really escalated and spiraled for me. But then when I tapped into the community, I felt less abnormal. I felt less weird. I felt less broken and damaged. I felt like accepted and validated for what I was feeling. And there's so much power in that because then you can, yeah, there's just so much power in that.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I don't think I even discovered PMDD online for, I mean, it was probably just within the past like 3 or 4 years. And when I got diagnosed, I sort of dived into it and tried to learn as much as I could. But then, yeah, the recent people talking about it, it's very validating. It's like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not the, because it did feel like I was the only person who was experiencing this. And I remember telling my mother-in-law, like, oh, this is just who I am. Like, this is just what I have. And she was the one who encouraged me to, like, go and get it checked out and talk to someone. But yeah, it really just felt like, well, this is just kind of like my cross to bear. This is just how it's going to be forever. And I'm, I'm special in a really bad way. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It does make you feel like that, doesn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so hard until you find that you're not alone with it. It's really hard.
It's really tough. And for some people, it really is like half of their lives. Like if you're experiencing symptoms 14 days before your cycle in a 28-day cycle, like that's half of your life that is succumbs to this disease and or disorder rather. And for me, it was always I felt the symptoms for 14 days, but there were 3 really bad days where I was like can't can't do anything and just kind of had to like isolate and wait it out. And then usually those were the 3 days right before my period. But I remember as a kid, my mom taught me to like track my periods, and I would always kind of try to pay attention to when I started feeling symptoms. And I remember feeling, especially in my like early 20s, really confused because I was always told PMS was the week before your period, but I was like, okay, well, I'm starting to, be crying a lot. So I'm probably going to start my period in a week. And then it would take me 2 weeks before my period would start. And I was like, so what was that? Was I actually, was there something going on? Am I actually depressed? Is it? And it's so hard to really understand until you get the diagnosis, or at least until you access the materials and read up on it and see other people's experiences too. And I also have ADHD, so it is very interesting to see how those two really intertwine.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I just think there's so many things that we're unpacking now with it. And we need that information because I think, when you go to a healthcare professional and through no fault of their own, because they can't they can't know about the condition that they've never been taught about.
Yeah,
But when you go to a healthcare professional seeking answers and you're so desperate for the answers because it does get really dark,
yeah,
you don't get the answers that you need and they don't know any better than you. It's really hard and you need to know what is going on with your body. And I think there's so much power in knowledge and having those little snippets of knowledge wherever you get it from, social media, online, in person, wherever it may be, just it has so much power because then you can really start to identify how it's impacting you as an individual, what help you as an individual need, and then just to get on the right path to better support.
yeah. What are your thoughts on the use of antihistamines to treat ADHD or to treat PMDD?
So I haven't personally tried this, but I've heard really good things about this. So
Yeah,
for some people, I know that it doesn't work, so it's obviously not for everybody. But I have seen research recently that has started to unpack a little bit more about the power of antihistamines on PMDD, which is really interesting. Again, it's, without that research, we wouldn't know this. And I speak to people within the community who have said that it's really alleviated their symptoms. So it's great to know that it's working for people.
Yeah, it's super cool. I have not tried it yet either, but I actually went out and bought the two that you're supposed to use because I think it's like a regular like Claritin or Zyrtec antihistamine, and then there's another one that I think is it's some type of antihistamine. It's Pepsid, so I think it actually treats heartburn if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, you have to use the two, and I actually think I'm going to try it this cycle. Like wait for because even with taking the antidepressants, the symptoms still break through. There's still bad days. I'm maybe not like on the floor, not able to get up, but I'm still feeling a lot of the symptoms and knowing that it is this condition. So I'm kind of waiting for a day like that to try it to see if it does work. And honestly, even if it is a placebo, if it works, great.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm willing to try anything at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've talked to people who have had success with birth control. I've tried birth control several times, and it seems to work at first, and then it ends up making it a whole lot worse. And so it's not something that's for me, but I know it's something that has helped a lot of people. So yeah.
Yeah, and again, I think it's one of the two main options that people get offered when they go to the
Mhm.
doctors and they say they've got PMDD, and they do get offered SSRIs, so antidepressants or contraception. And I don't believe those should be the only two options.
Yeah.
But there are so many other options out there, and you know, it's not going to work for everybody, and everyone should be entitled to choose what they want to go for. For me personally, contraception just didn't work. I've got a non-hormonal contraceptive coil.
Oh yeah.
Um, Works fine because it's not adding any hormones into my body. Prior to that, though, I've taken many different pills, and none of them agreed with me at
Yeah.
all. And actually, yeah, you're right, it intensified my PMDD.
Yeah.
Um, and I think actually in a few years' time, we'll probably start to unpack even more research into maybe the damage it's causing and the impact that it's having and how it's probably not for everybody. Because yes, it works for some people, but I just hear so many stories where it isn't the case.
Yeah. Can you speak to some of the other options that people can try, or maybe some other things that you've seen that do help?
So for some people, I know that lifestyle changes are a big thing. So really, this will need to go with other approaches because I know that for some people this just isn't going to be the be all and end all. But I think I'm all about the holistic approach, and I really want to try everything under the sun to try and alleviate my symptoms. So it can be really being mindful about what you're consuming. So I no longer drink coffee, I no longer have caffeine
Oh,
because it would just spike my anxiety. I would crash massively, and I struggle with anxiety and fatigue and insomnia during my luteal phase. And so those three things are massively impacted when I have caffeine. Now, since quitting caffeine, I've noticed a huge reduction in my anxiety. Yes, I'm not healed. I still struggle with anxiety, but it's massively changed. So that small tweak of a lifestyle change has contributed to me feeling that little bit better.
yeah.
For some, it's exercise and working out what exercise works for you. So I think me personally, again, I love going to the gym. I prefer working with weights. I don't enjoy cardio. And I've never really been into yoga or Pilates. But since really starting to understand my body and how my body works within the cycle, and leaning into that cycle, I've now changed up my fitness regime, I suppose. So in the follicular phase, when I'm feeling good, when I'm feeling like me, I can still lift weights. And then when I enter the luteal phase, no weights at all. I will just do gentle exercises, aerobic exercises. I have started doing Pilates, and I think I've really noticed a difference in the fatigue, but also less stress on my body. My cortisol levels will be lower because I'm not overexerting my body. My body is tired, and I need to listen to that.
Yeah.
And when I think just listening to your body in that way, as well as many other ways, is so powerful. Just listening to what you need. And then for some people, so a contributing factor of PMDD can be trauma. So for
Mm-hmm.
some people, it can be trauma anyway. So for some people, therapy is a really good route to go down. And therapy can come in many different shapes and forms. So it can be talking therapies, it can be CBT, it can be DBT, and actually research has just come out as well where DBT has been found to be really, really positive for people with PMDD as well.
Huh.
Um, and supplements too. So I know for some people, there can be things like iron, vitamin B6, magnesium, lots of different things that can sort of help just reduce those symptoms and make you feel a little bit better.
I love that. I just recently started taking magnesium, and because I also get hormonal migraines, and I've noticed in the past 2 cycles, I've gotten my normal headaches, but I haven't gotten them to like migraine levels. And I sleep so well, which has been so nice. It's a little bit hard to like
Wow.
honestly wake up in the morning, but I sleep well throughout the night, which has been really nice.
That's really good. I have heard that about magnesium actually.
Yeah.
I've taken it a couple of times, but my issue is I'm really inconsistent. And I think especially when I'm hormonal, I am so tired. I don't have any energy. I've got brain fog, so I forget everything. So just remembering to take all these supplements can be really challenging, but I have heard really good things about it. So if you
Yeah.
can take them, please do.
Yeah, I have to take them all at night. I asked my primary doctor. I was like, "Is it okay if I take supplements at night? Like, are you?" Somehow I had in my mind that if you're taking a vitamin, you got to take it in the morning. She was like, "No, you can take it at any time." I was like, "Great," because I cannot remember. My morning routine is different every day, but my nighttime routine is always the same. And I think this is probably an ADHD trait that like when things are the same, we're good. We can do this. But when things change just a little bit, it's like it's all out the door. Did I brush my teeth? I don't know. Like, just we're
Yeah,
here now.
I completely connect with that.
Yeah. It's crazy. So, what advice would you give to someone if they're curious whether or not they have PMDD?
So you actually touched on it before, and tracking your symptoms is the most powerful thing that you can do for many reasons, because I think when you track your symptoms, I always advise people track their symptoms for at least 3 cycles because
Mm,
then you can take that information to the doctors. I think if you go as armed as possible with resources, information, data to the doctors, then they're just able to really identify PMDD or at least rule out other conditions. So when I go with with my cycle that's been tracked for 3 months and it lists every single day, not just in the luteal phase, but every single day, exactly how I'm feeling. Then my doctor is able to identify the secular nature of my condition. They're able to rule out bipolar disorder, for example. They're able to see how intense my anxiety gets, how intense my depression gets, how intense the brain fog and the bloating gets, therefore able to rule out PMS. And it just really helps to inform them that bit better. But also with tracking your cycle, it makes me in control of my cycle because for so long, my cycle has controlled me. So
yeah.
now I know exactly what day I'm on. I know what to expect tomorrow. I know what to expect next week. That means then I can plan my social life around it because I don't want to have to do that, but I have to.
Yeah.
I can't go out in the week prior to my period. I just can't socialize. I can't present in meetings, in work, and I'm fortunate enough to be quite flexible with my schedule.
Mm,
So I can plan my work schedule around my cycle as well. And I think just having that power also helps me with my boyfriend, for example. I can say, look, I'm going to be in that phase this week, so stay away. And it just really helps me just be as prepared as possible and just be in control because I think for a lot of people, they feel so out of control with it.
mhm.
So just having that bit of power can make such a difference. So yeah, I'd say track your cycle. And if you are wanting to get that diagnosis and you're struggling to, don't be afraid to ask for a second opinion, third opinion. I think I had a 15th opinion until I got the answer that I needed. And just like I said, go armed with resources. The PMDD project have got loads of free resources on our website about PMDD. There's one specifically for GPs. We also offer
Perfect.
healthcare training too. And I think just giving your doctor that information before your consultation, because typically an appointment lasts 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, and so you've got 15 minutes to really get across how it's impacting you as an individual, you don't want to have to spend those 15 minutes explaining what PMDD is. So if you can, pre-warn them and educate them before you go into that room, it just means that you're really making the most out of those 15 minutes.
I love that. I was just going to ask you if you thought that doctors are becoming more aware of this, and if so, how is that happening? So that's really cool that your organization provides information for GPs, because that's something that, I mean, even when I was diagnosed, it was a male psychiatrist, and he told me, you have PMDD, which basically means you have PMS. And I was like, I don't think that is what that means. But, and so it's like even the person who diagnosed me didn't fully understand the condition. So I think educating physicians and providing resources for them that are very credible is very helpful. So I'm thankful that your organization is doing that.
Oh, thank you. I think just speaking to so many, I mean, I had I say funny, it's you have to laugh in these
Yeah,
situations.
exactly.
I had funny responses from doctors, and just from speaking to the community, some of the responses are just, I can't, that I'm bewildered. So one doctor advised a patient to try drinking wine because that will help their symptoms, or and ask them how their partner copes with it. Just some crazy responses that we get from healthcare professionals. But I think, and that's part of the reason why I do it, because ultimately, there are so many conditions out there. A doctor can't be expected to know every single one. And especially if it's not part of the medical curriculum, which in the UK it's not. PMDD isn't taught in medical schools. So if it's not on their radar, they're not going to know how to recognize it in patients potentially presenting symptoms. And so that's where we come in. We don't want to have to, I think it's wrong that there's this narrative that we're angry with the healthcare professionals because they
Mm.
haven't been taught, they haven't been
Yeah.
given the tools for it. So we kind of want to be that stepping stone and to give them the tools to better understand the condition and how to recognize it in patients, and therefore how to diagnose them, therefore how to support them. There's no clear pathway right now, and that's something we're really trying hard to change. And it's not just GPs that we're training, it's psychiatrists,
Mm.
psychologists, it's occupational therapists. We're trying to
Yeah.
train all kinds of healthcare professionals because they're all going to come into sorry, I can't think. They're all going to come to face, patients presenting PMDD. It might be midwives that,
Yeah.
or nurses that work with people who have had babies, and they need to recognise it too because it can impact those that have become mothers and maybe never had PMDD before.
That's really interesting. Yeah, because I know that I was warned when I got pregnant, like your postpartum depression will probably be much higher because you already have this condition, like, or at least that you'll be much more susceptible to experiencing postpartum depression, which was very true. Um, and yeah, and it was so funny because with each kid, I had a different experience postpartum, but fortunately, having the experience of having PMDD and navigating that, I was able to know, okay, this is not normal. I need to get help. But that's really interesting that people could develop it after having kids. And that totally makes sense because your hormones change so dramatically that I could
Absolutely.
imagine the brain's response would also shift.
Yeah, definitely. And again, there's a lot of, well, a lack of research
Yeah.
in this, but it's a conversation that we're having with so many people. They're reaching out and saying, look, I've never had a problem with my periods before having a
Mhm.
kid, and now I've got one. I can't cope. And it's your hormones have gone all over the place during pregnancy, and your body's changed. It just has changed permanently. So I think, you've got to really accept that and understand that, and like be kind to yourself about that, because then once you start to understand that your body has changed and hormones have changed and shifted, then we can realize that okay, it's probably normal for PMDD to occur afterwards. That is it seems to be happening for a lot of people.
That's so interesting. Yeah. Can you tell us more about your organization, how it got started, and what it is that you do, your goal, and how it works?
Yeah, so the PMDD project was founded in April 2024. Um, and I suppose the reason I founded it was because there was a lack of information out there, a lack of resources, especially for someone like me who isn't medically trained, just
Hmm.
needed to make sense of my condition in layman's terms, and just wanted to tap into a community that got it and understood. So the purpose of the PMDD project is exactly that, to support people impacted by PMDD. So there's three pillars to our work. The first pillar is raising awareness. So we train healthcare professionals, we train businesses and try and educate them on how to support their staff, but also how employees can support themselves if they have PMDD in the workplace. Because, I mean, for me personally, coping with PMDD in the workplace is a huge struggle. So we educate businesses too, and we work with policymakers, we work with the government to try and implement real policy change, to make sure that people with PMDD are heard and that they're not discriminated against and they're better supported. So we've recently just supported the renewal of the women's health strategy in the UK. We also, the second pillar is providing support. So we've got support groups all over the UK, and we have an online one as well that's accessible for anyone in the world to join. And we have support resources available for anybody in the world as well to access. They're free to download. We've got 17 at the moment, and we're building quite a few more. And that's just a list that's going to be exhaustive. The more information that comes out, the more we start to learn about PMDD, the more answers people need from us, the more resources we'll create. So yeah, they're on our website, and it really just taps into lots of different areas of PMDD. And then we also, the third pillar is supporting research. So I know I've mentioned quite a bit on this call that there is a lack of research, but the research that is out there, we're trying to support in whatever way that may be, whatever way is possible. We work with institutions like King's College London to really accelerate awareness and treatment and support into PMDD.
That's incredible. I'm really excited by your work because it's so needed, and to hear that there's actual policy that can help protect people with this, or which policy acts as such a great awareness campaign, to be able to have something from the top down makes a huge difference, I think. So I'm going to look in to see if there's anything like that in the US. I'm not aware of anything that has to do with PMDD in our legislature, but I'm going to look it up because that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I definitely recommend checking out IAPMD as well, who do a lot of work in America.
Oh,
So there could potentially be some policy work that they're working on. I know they've been doing a great deal of work in America, so definitely recommend checking them out.
I absolutely will. Yeah, and if I find anything before this airs, I'll provide a little update on this episode. So it'll be great.
Perfect.
Um, Perfect. Well, where can everyone find you, and where can people learn more about the PMDD project?
So you can find us on Instagram at the PMDD Project, or on our website, thepmddproject.org. That's where you can find all of our resources. That's where you can contact any of us about whether you want to join a support group, whether you want your business to be educated on PMDD and become a PMDD aware business, whether you have maybe a healthcare trust or a healthcare provider that you think could be educated a little bit more, then that's where we come in, and you can contact us about that. We are also building a PMDD directory. So this directory is going to be a hub of all PMDD aware professionals.
Oh,
So if you
great.
are struggling and you need to find somewhere nationally or locally, we will have the answers for you very soon. That'll be coming live. And we've also launched a newsletter, which is going to be, the first edition will be coming out next week, I believe. So yeah, so you can go onto our website to register for that.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And I'll put all of this in the show notes too so that people can see all of the information. Phoebe, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a real pleasure, and I think this is going to be a great conversation for a lot of people.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for another episode. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe. You can find us on Substack and YouTube, and also on major podcasting platforms. And I hope you all have a beautiful and healthy day.